have people that have no incentive to save because their currency is depreciating. In most of the world, they have currencies that often will lose half their value in a year. You have most of the world kind of locked in poverty. And for the first time, we have a system that can bring a level playing field to the world.
Mike Peterson, the director of Bitcoin Beach.
And Keroles, director of financial freedom at the Human Rights Foundation, are two leading voices using Bitcoin to empower communities and defend human rights.
People say Bitcoin is a scam. Bitcoin's just for trading. Bitcoin's for criminals. Well, what if Bitcoin is technology that can magnify how many geniuses that have the capability to be a part of the economy by 5, by 8? What does that mean for humanity?
What I wanted to do was kind of show you all what is actually happening in this side of the world, because it's a lot bigger than you think.
We've gone from the banks laughing at it to being very antagonistic to now you see them starting to realize that they better get on board, adapt this new reality.
I think that Bitcoin is a monetary paradigm shift. It is next level in our ability to do science, do math, make economic calculations, send money across the world, bring people online so they can contribute to the advancement of humanity. No one is bullish enough on this asset.
Bitcoin is many things to many people, but what does the tipping point look like from all the frontlines work you're doing?
One thing we're seeing is the idea of circular Bitcoin economy is kind of spread throughout the world. You'll see a lot of countries adopt Bitcoin as legal tender as they kind of go down the same route that we did.
We're at the center of something that could have massive impact on the world. I guess my question for you two is, what would you say is a call to action for 400 people? How can we be more involved? How can we be part of something that's bigger than ourselves?
Let me answer this one. So
we are super lucky to bring two people who are literally at the center of everything in the Bitcoin world here to our little bubble of like this weird company that's a Bitcoin company, but not really a Bitcoin company because we're like the bridge to all the normie companies. And so what I wanted to do was kind of show you all what is actually happening in this side of the world, because as I said in my presentation, it's a lot bigger than you think. So I'll just kind of start with Mike. Could you just do like a quick intro to yourself and CK as well? Because I think people are going to be really blessed for you guys being here.
Sure. My name is Mike Peterson. I'm the founder of Bitcoin Beach, which was a project in El Salvador, really trying to bring financial inclusion to impoverished communities in El Salvador and the coastal area there. And it started out as a very small grassroots project with just a handful of local kids that we were trying to keep from joining the gangs, which had historically been a huge issue in El Salvador. And so we started paying them in Bitcoin to do kind of small little tasks. And this project kind of grew from there and took over the community. And eventually El Salvador wound up adopting Bitcoin as legal tender because they saw the impact that it was having there in El Zonte, the small community.
Hey y'all, I'm Keroles. People call me CK. I am the director of financial freedom at the Human Rights Foundation, which is a very awesome job to have. Human Rights Foundation is a nonprofit based in New York, and we focus on supporting freedom, liberty, democracy, and opposing tyranny. So why is an organization like that in Bitcoin? We have been a very scrappy organization throughout our 17 years of existence. We've always taken on technology very hands-on, and we've been very cutting edge. Some examples of this: we were really early on encrypted email, encrypted messaging. It was really important for the people we worked with. We had a program called Flash Drives for Freedom, where we would load up flash drives full of entertainment from Western media, send it to North Korea, send it to Cuba, try to show people like there's a world outside of this. And in 2016, we did a fundraiser to support activists in Ukraine, and the only way to get the money was Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the only electronic monetary system that worked. There was a line on Reddit, like nothing can save them but Bitcoin. So we helped facilitate that fundraiser. And then fast forward to 2018, we started putting on content similar to this, panels, conversations, just kind of like thought around Bitcoin. In 2020, we created a fund that donates to Bitcoin education, development, and empowerment, adoption in general. And in 2022, I joined that fund, and I've been helping HRF kind of spread Bitcoin internally into HRF and externally to the people that we work with.
Isn't it cool to have these guys here?
Bitcoin is many things to many people, but one of the things I've seen, in whatever, much dozen plus years, is things that start small actually like have this huge compounding effect over time. We'll talk about that at the company.
Check. Oh, there we go. I got so excited these guys are here. I forgot how to use a mic. Or I might be just tired running this all day. I don't know. But I think one of the things that to me is interesting is right now you hear about it a lot in the news. And, I told you about our story when we got debanked in, I don't know, what was it, 2012 for being a Bitcoin company. And so gradually and then suddenly is kind of the saying, right? And so these guys have been at the center of this for a long time. And so you might hear about El Salvador or nation state adoption, but it didn't start that way. And so, Mike, can you kind of describe the scrappy grassroots kind of origin story of the work you were doing?
Sure. I think one reason it's tough for people in the US or even Europe to really understand the importance of Bitcoin is because we have a financial system that, for the most part, works for us. We're able to borrow money cheaply to buy homes. We're able to zip money back and forth to friends, whether it's using Zelle or I don't even know what they use anymore because I don't live here, but Venmo, thank you. Venmo or Cash App or
Lightning?
Yes. So I only use Bitcoin. But you guys all have access to all these things that really the majority of the world don't have access to. And it's not a matter of just bringing these technologies to places because that's actually very easy. The problem is it's not ever going to be profitable to bank most of the world. And that's a lot of that has to do with the financial regulations that we have with AML and KYC policies that really put this cost and this friction in the system so that somebody's only making a few $100s a month, they're never going to be a profitable customer. And so because of that, they're never going to have access to the financial system. They'll never be able to save, to invest for the future. And so you have people that really, they have no incentive to save because their currency is depreciating and going down in value. And El Salvador was actually better than most because they were using the US dollar. But in most of the world, they have currencies that often will lose half their value in a year. And so you have most of the world kind of locked in poverty. And for the first time, we have a system that can bring a level playing field to the world. And that's Bitcoin because it's permissionless. There's no intermediaries. There's nobody they can keep them from opting into that system. And so we saw in El Salvador, where I was at, the majority, probably 90% of the people didn't have bank accounts. In fact, the way that they would save would be they would buy cinder blocks because they knew in the future they wanted to build a house or expand. And because the dollar continues to lose value, that those cinder blocks would be more expensive in the future. So that was the one way they had to kind of store money. And so obviously that's not something that you get very excited about. That's not something that's going to help you kind of generate wealth that you can pass on to your kids and bring them out of poverty. And so they kind of remain mired in that. And so we saw Bitcoin as a tool that we could start paying the kids in Bitcoin. And so we started very small. We were paying them, equivalent of like $5 to $10 a day to clean the river or the beach. And, a lot of it was to keep them occupied, to keep them from joining the gangs. But also they started earning Bitcoin. And once they started earning it, they started to question, what is money? Like, why does this have value? What is this crazy thing that you guys are paying us now that we see is, has this huge volatility? And because of that, they started to understand that money is your stored time, your stored energy, and that if you spend it now, you don't have it for later. And so they learned things like opportunity costs and deferred gratification, things that are very important if we're going to build a better future. And so that's kind of how it started. And a lot of them had told us, when we encouraged them to save was, hey, how can I save? I only make $300 a month. And we kind of looked and, I don't know that's tough. But what we saw was once they started getting paid in Bitcoin, they naturally started saving because every purchase they made, they really questioned, do I want to spend my Satoshis on this? Because I think it's going to be worth more in the future. And so that created this habit of savings to where we would be shocked. We'd see between what they were saving and the appreciation of Bitcoin, they would have enough to replace the roof on their family home or to buy a new bicycle or a computer for school. And so it wasn't just the financial benefit, but it changed their mindset. They really felt for the first time they could participate in the global economy. It even spilled over into other things like education, where in the past they felt like, well, why go to high school or why go to university? It's better to just get a job now and be able to kind of help support my family. This shifting their time preference showed them that actually, yes, they're sacrificing now by not receiving a salary, but by bringing up their education level, in the future, they can earn much more and do something they enjoy a lot more. And so we saw once we introduced Bitcoin to their lives, it kind of rippled into all these different areas. And there's a saying in the Bitcoin space that you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And we've seen that really firsthand.
Mike's always humble, but what year was that?
It was 2019 when we introduced Bitcoin to it. It was an ongoing project that had been going on for probably 5 years prior to that.
Yeah, I think the kind of lesson there, right, is like we hear about nation state adoption but it actually started at the ground level. Like we talk a lot about at Paystand, like in many ways, our focus has been to go actually build real impact and like take away the hype. There's a lot of hype companies in the space with different motives. I think one of the things Mike showed is like actually rolling up your hands and sleeves and not like thinking, but actually doing has had huge impacts over time. And I would say that my experience in El Salvador has been, their work at the ground tilled the soil for what you ultimately see. And so super cool, man. Super cool. CK, like you guys, we had Alex talk at one point, and he was sort of talking about sort of the overall mission and the overall impact. But I think the thing that's hit me when I got the chance to go to Oslo was like the stories on the ground, right? So in some ways, Mike's talking about what it was like, in a basic circular economy creation. But you guys had a different sort of route to kind of front lines work. You guys actually were touching people in war zones and, sort of impoverished areas. So can you describe what was actually happening for some of the people you work with on the front lines, whether it was in, Afghanistan or Ukraine, or, there's some wild things you guys have been involved with.
So HRF is, really when it comes to the politics that we get involved with, we don't touch any democracies. The reason why it's not because democracies are perfect, it's because in democracies, you can have a civil rights organization that can say, hey, this is wrong, right? The places that we work in are places where you're not allowed to have any sort of civil society. Places where if you disagree and you stand up, then you are subject to detainment or whatever. That's just not allowed. You're not allowed to have you can't make fun of the dictator, right? So these are the places that HRF is mostly focused, because those places, there's not a lot of funding that goes towards helping those people out. It's not easy to make that happen. And ultimately, we found that's where we get the most return on our time spent and our efforts spent helping people. So in terms of the type of people that we work with, sometimes it's activists who are in dire straits right now. Sometimes it's people that are fleeing unsafe situations, whether it's like Lebanon with conflict breaking out in the southern border, or whether it's very recently right now is the people of Venezuela standing up to Maduro and trying to have their voices heard and needing fundraising, being able to stand up auditing of elections and things like that. So there's like a really wide spectrum of different scenarios where, we're trying to help. And in so many scenarios, being able to receive and store your money makes it easier, right? So let's say the Venezuelan example. Well, if you want to incentivize lots of people beyond like they already are incentivized for freedom to want to be a part of this civil process because they've been pushed so far over the last 20 some years, you need to be able to fund them, right? You need to be able to say, if you put yourself in harm's way, that there's something there to protect them. And it's very difficult to get money in to Venezuela, but Bitcoin works and stable coins work. It has enabled this resistance 10 times more than they would have been able if they were operating on paper cash or if they're operating on some other analog system. They can't use the internal system within Venezuela because that's owned by the dictators, right? So when you need to stand up to the internal system, Bitcoin works. When you're debanked, Bitcoin works. Another example, amazing activist, her name is Farida Nabarema. She was an Tongolese activist fighting the dictator in Congo since she was younger than 13, but she made a very strong push in her 20s. She's been living in exile and actually being able to have Bitcoin in a situation she actually survived, but she could have died because she was not able to. She was in a foreign country in Africa. She was not able to pay with debit, right? So in the United States, they won't let you die if you can't pay. But in a lot of countries in the world, they will. Like, that's actually very normal. If you have the funds, but you can't get the funds there within, before the surgery or something like that, often you won't get operated on. So Frida needed immediate medical attention. She's outside of her home country. She's traveling. We have the privilege of, we have dollars, we have a credit card, a Visa. Usually that works. In the country that she was at, she had to have friends try to collect debit cards because they all had a maximum of a $250 limit. So they had to collect debit cards to try to get this transaction to happen. But in a world where, she could have had Bitcoin, she could have, been in control of her own money remotely or had someone that she trusted send Bitcoin, liquidated the Bitcoin, in the country and paid for her medical. And, these are just small examples. And I know it's kind of from Venezuela to medicine, but these are just small examples of the money needs to work for people to stand up, or the money needs to work for people to survive. And if these things don't work, then that means lives, that means freedoms. And Bitcoin offers a technology that could could move the needle from 1 billion out of the 8 billion people on the planet having this technology, having this ability, to could be 4 billion, could it be 6 billion, could be 7 billion. So this is just so important because people say Bitcoin is a scam. Bitcoin is just for trading. Bitcoin is for criminals. Well, what if Bitcoin is technology that can, magnify how many geniuses that have the capability to be a part of the economy, by 8, by 5? What does that mean for humanity? And I think that's why HRF is in Bitcoin. I think, that's why Paystand's probably finding business reasons to be in Bitcoin. And, you all should feel like you're part of a cutting edge organization, not, you should, if you have any questions about it, you should wash that away. It's very exciting stuff.
Super cool. And I think what CK is pointing out is a lot of the impact that happens, the ripples go way beyond where the work you're doing, right? So whether it's a frontline person in Africa or grassroots in El Zonte or some boring B2B thing, we're all part of something that's bigger than ourselves. And so it's been crazy to watch the change over. All three of us have seen multiple cycles now. And so what turned out to be a little bit of a grassroots resistance is now becoming kind of mainstream in a way, right? And so, Mike, you've now been involved with nation state leaders. CK, you were involved prior to HRF, this conference is just now getting just giant. And so I wonder if you guys could give a sense, because not everybody's, we're really blessed to have these guys here. They sit in front of 20,000 people talking. And so what's going on in the broader space? This bigger movement is starting to add up. You've been through multiple cycles now. What does the tipping point look like more broadly from all the front lines work you're doing now back to presidents and public companies?
I'd say one thing we're seeing is we've seen it, the idea of circular Bitcoin economy is kind of spread throughout the world. Right now, we're working with probably 3 or 4 dozen initiatives that are trying to replicate what's happened in El Salvador. And I think you'll see a lot of countries adopt Bitcoin as legal tender because of those projects as they kind of go down the same route that we did. But to give you kind of just a small little anecdote from what we're seeing in El Salvador. This past week, I got a DM from the president of one of the biggest banks in El Salvador. I think it's a Colombian bank, actually, Banco Agrícola, and which I was kind of surprised because the banks have been, especially initially, have been a little antagonistic towards the new Bitcoin law in El Salvador. And so I was kind of surprised to get this message from the guy. And he said, hey, a friend of mine is a professor at Princeton, and they're bringing a contingent of students down to see what's happening in El Salvador. Would you be willing to meet with them and share them what's going on? And then he went on to say that, even though, yes, he knows there's been this kind of rock relationship, that he sees the potential and that this is, basically insinuated that he sees that this is the future. And so we've gone from the banks kind of, laughing at it to, being very antagonistic to now you see them starting to realize that they better get on board and that they're going to have to adapt to this new reality. And so that for me has been super exciting to see and this is only in a few years that this has happened. So I think 10 years from now, I have a hard time seeing a world where Bitcoin doesn't play a major role and where that doesn't just really level the playing field so that whether that you're, somebody who's privileged like all of us who live in a country that's fairly wealthy and have access to everything, or you're in a country that's, only known poverty, I think you're going to have a level playing field.
Oh, man. It's tough to follow up Mike every time. So I have a Twitter account, and on it I tweet a lot that no one is bullish enough on Bitcoin. And the idea behind that is I think that Bitcoin is a monetary paradigm shift. So what does that mean? So paradigm shift is like going from Roman numerals to our current numeric system. So people don't really appreciate how important the zero is. But like with a zero, then you can it really makes your math way more compact than imagine trying to do complex math with Roman numerals. It was really hard. What was built on that, right? So zero equals rocket ships, right? So you get the zero, you get skyscrapers. You get the zero, now you have the ability to do the computation to get out of gravity, to get past Earth, right? So if Bitcoin's this monetary paradigm shift, you go from unknown monetary to supply to everything in the world is countable in the fixed monetary units of Bitcoin. What does that mean? Is that equivalent to us getting the zero? Does that mean our technology compounds a million times beyond what we can imagine from this point on? I don't know. But, if Bitcoin is this paradigm shift, if it is this next level in our ability to do science, do math, make economic calculations, send money across the world, bring people online so they can contribute to, the advancement of humanity. No one is bullish enough on this asset. I don't know if that sounds like crazy talk. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not guaranteed, but if it works, it's very, very optimistic. And the idea, HRF's logo around Bitcoin is money dictators can't stop. So if it truly is, money that dictators can't stop, money that, if good people get it, it'll fuel them and make them more unstoppable. I can't think of something more exciting to be working on these days. So very optimistic, and the fact that it's something that doesn't have reputational risk today is just huge, because just 4 years ago you could destroy your reputation by putting your name behind Bitcoin. So I think that that's really shifting in a huge way, and once that's gone, people go from I don't want to develop on Bitcoin, I want to develop on crypto, or I don't want to do this stuff. That risk is gone, and I think the talent coming into Bitcoin is going to ignite, and that's actually going to make Bitcoin even better than it is right now.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's fun to watch that, the Overton window shift.
Oh, now I'm doing it. CK, I just want to be like CK. It's cool. Yeah,
don't do it.
Don't do it. So we as a company couldn't talk about it for years. Right? I've seen salespeople who are I'm so scared to say how our network works. They're all nodding their head. But it's a big difference when you have, elected politicians and the banks and folks that are asking all of a sudden. And so it is kind of a privilege. It's a privilege in many ways, right? We're at the center of something that could, have massive impact on the world, and I've seen these two carry the responsibility and the stewardship, with great care. And so I guess my question for you two is, you have almost 400 people who, is engaged in some way. Some are super maxis who are getting, like me, all of our payroll in Bitcoin, pushing every piece of product we can. And then others are a little bit like, well, I joined for the cool fintech unicorn, but I don't know about this other crazy thing Jeremy's been talking about over and over and over and over and over again. So what would you say is a call to action for 400 people who have privilege, both in the US, here in Silicon Valley, and then in Latin America, where, we're one of the tech leaders? How can we be more involved? How can we, other than our day jobs, be part of something that's bigger than ourselves?
I would first just encourage people to think in terms, to think about it globally, and to not think about just how it impacts your life, but imagine if you didn't have access to all the financial tools that you have, all those were taken away from you, just what a lifeline Bitcoin would offer. And then kind of extrapolate that to the globe of these people that have been living in poverty for their whole lives, and imagine how that can transform the future. And I can't see you not getting excited about that and the opportunity to participate and be some of the people that are kind of pushing that forward. And then obviously in Bitcoin, the earlier you get on the bandwagon, the more it benefits your life. We've just seen that from people that have been in from early days. It provides you financial flexibility later in life to really invest yourself in things you want to be a part of. But you guys have the privilege to not choose one or the other. You're actually in a company that believes in that and is allowing you, in fact, encouraging you to do that in your work. And so I would encourage you guys, every day as you're doing your work, to just realize that's very unique. We know so many people in the Bitcoin space that are just dying to work for Bitcoin companies or to have that opportunity. And so you guys have it at your fingertips. So I encourage you to really explore how far you can go with that.
The cool thing about Bitcoin is that you don't really have to get involved at all to kind of push it forward. And if Bitcoin's good for the world, then that's going to help. So you could just continue doing what you're doing at Paystand, just code, work in HR, do ops, whatever it is. And if Paystand's pushing the Bitcoin network forward, making it easier for people to use it, securing the network, etc., that's going to help the network. So you don't have to go beyond what you're already doing. Obviously, if you are really interested in Bitcoin, you can learn about it. You can use it for savings. I think that you'll have a good time doing that for the most part, as long as you're responsible. Don't get over your skis there. Gambling is still gambling. You can gamble with houses. You can gamble with Bitcoin. You can gamble with shares. It's still gambling. So, as long as you invest responsibly, it definitely can be really positive. But yeah, there's a wealth of knowledge. There's a massive community. For me, I got into Bitcoin. I subsequently quit my job, got a Bitcoin job. Now I have a career in Bitcoin. So, if you're interested there's a lot of activity. If anything, I've never seen more people so actively and aggressively network all the time as people who are in the Bitcoin space. So if you have the energy for it, it's there too. But one thing that's really interesting about Bitcoin, because the media will have you think otherwise, Bitcoin is really deep. So, whatever you want out of that rabbit hole, you can get it. So you could spend 10,000 hours or, you don't have to think about it ever again. But it's definitely there. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Bitcoin is many things to many people, right? Bitcoin's hope. And so I think along those lines, one of the things we encourage you all to do, besides, your job does actually actively move it forward, is get involved in stuff like this, right? So out of curiosity, because it was crazy that we did this, how many people went to El Salvador now from either office? I think we've sent maybe 30 people down there now. How many people are interested in going down there if we were going to do the next fellowship? Wow, look at that, Alex. Volunteers.
You should have put a slide with some pictures of El Zante up there when you asked that question, so they know how beautiful it is.
It's true. I do like to surf there. It's true. Shh, don't tell them that, Mike. I'm doing good for the world.
No, but it's really cool. So I want to encourage you guys all, like, I think as CK said, it's a super active community. You know, I've been tech for a long, long time. I've never seen anything where it's bigger, a movement is bigger than any company. It's bigger than any organization. You know, and in this case, it's actually bigger than just a standard technology thing. Like, people don't just like, we talk about AI and how it's going to drive efficiency in the organization this year, and that's true. But like, people don't passionately get up and go like, God, my life is going to change if I just add some more AI into my life, right? Probably the other way around is what most people think. And so the community is so unique because it's bigger than just a job. It's bigger than just technology. You know, it's ultimately hope and change life. So these guys are going to be around. It's really, really a special privilege. So I hope you guys get a chance to talk to them, to meet them, spend a little bit of time with them, because they are really pushing the world forward, and we're kind of privileged to just, in our own small way, come alongside these two. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.